Hi folks, it's Calc here. I'm over in Sweden with Algam Nordics, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the Novation Summit synthesizer. The Novation Summit is our latest flagship synthesizer and is based around the same technology that we developed for the Peak synthesizer. The Peak is an 8-voice desktop system, whereas you can see here with Summit we have 61 full-size keys. And in actual fact, a good way to think about Summit is to have kind of two peaks inside one instrument. And this allows us to do a lot of really nice things. So, in real terms, the Summit is a 16-voice instrument. That means I can play huge, great big chords using up to 16 different voices, or I can stack oscillators in unison to to use up more of the voices and give even bigger sounding patches. So it's a 16-voice instrument, but we've also got a very interesting way of being able to split it into two 8-voice instruments as well, and this allows us to have what we call a bitimbral instrument. So on the Summit, on this side here, we have a single button and we also have a multi-button. And when we go into the multi-patches here, let's just pull up a nice, okay, so here we've got one bass and prog lead, and this is using a split point. So at the lower end of the keyboard, we're going to have probably the bass sound, and then at the higher end, we've got a completely different sound for the lead part, and we can do some very interesting things. So for example, we can, let's find a nice layer. So here is a layered sound, and this is taking the two synthesizers and stacking them on top of each other to give me one really huge sound. And you can tell that with the layered sounds, you can use these two different engines, stack them on top of each other and get some really very complex and great sounding sounds. The final mode that we have in the bitimbral side is dual, and dual will allow me to split it into two completely independent synthesizers. And when I'm in a dual mode, so let's find a nice dual sound. I don't know what this one will be like, but let's go to dual. So now I'm going to play part A. So there's a nice, really warm analog style sound. And if we go to part B now, I should have an arpeggiated sound. So you can see we can split them into two, or indeed, again, if we go to layer, then we can have both playing at the same time. So we've got a lot of scope for really making a lot of incredibly sculpted patches. Now in terms of the synthesizer itself, it's a 3 oscillator per voice synth. We have 16 voices, we have 3 oscillators. That effectively means we've got 48 oscillators that we can play with. Now the oscillators are being generated in the digital world, but we have some very interesting and powerful technology that mean that they are the highest resolution oscillators in a commercially available synthesizer really. We use a special type of processor called an FPGA, which is running at incredibly high sample rates of 24 megahertz. That effectively means that when I maybe, for example, create a sine wave, that's actually being drawn at 24 million times a second. Now, a traditional digital synthesizer would be using a digital to analog converter, and that might be working at sample rates of 44.1 or 48 kilohertz, 44,100 times a second. So you can imagine when you've got 24 million times a second in terms of the resolution of that oscillator being created, the sound is absolutely stunning. And in many ways, it's it's almost impossible to discern the difference between this type of digital oscillator or an analog oscillator. So the oscillators there are being generated in the digital realm, and that gives us access to a lot of power. We can have our traditional analog shapes: triangle, sawtooth, wave, saw wave, sine wave and square wave. I got there in the end. But also we have wavetables in here, and we've got actually 70 different wavetables that we can use as well for generating our sounds. Very powerful stuff. So after the oscillators, I'll talk a little bit about the filter. The filter is a purely analog filter. The filter, the amplifiers and the distortions, there are three really nice distortions in Summit, they're all in the analog world. So we have this really nice hybrid approach between making the best of digital and going into the analog world. Finally, we'll just go over to the very end here, and we've got three incredibly powerful effects processors as well. We've got a chorus, a delay and a reverb, so you can add a lot of really wonderful shine to the sound. And in fact, don't forget, you know, we have two distinct engines in here, so in actual fact we have two effects processors. We've basically got two of everything: two arpeggiators, two effects processors, two sets of synthesizer engine. So the Summit is now making its way into stores, so do go and try it out. I think you'll be really impressed when you have a listen to the Summit. It's a really powerful instrument, and you know the possibilities with Summit are absolutely huge. Anyway, that was a little word about our brand new flagship synthesizer, so do check it out, and thanks very much for watching.